Hi there, it's the end of the year, and that means I get to talk about all of the things that I read this year and all the things I want to keep reading next year. And I thought I would start that this week with a little series wrap up. I have done my best series of the year ranked if you want to watch that. This is going to be all of the series that I started and want to complete or make a lot of progress in 2025. Hopefully I will be able to finish them, but we'll see. The first one is one that I just finished everything that's out, and I don't know if there's going to be another one out in 2025, but if there is, I'll be picking that up, and that is the Saint of Steel series by T. Kingfisher. There are 4 books currently out in this series, and it's a continuation of a larger world, which is called the World of the White Rat. And in that world, I have read Swordheart, and next year I plan on reading the Clocktar Boys series, which is a duology of 2 books set in this world that predate the events of the Saint of Steel. So I'm kind of going backward in time a little bit, but I was unaware of these books when I started the Saint of Steel. Swordheart is also set in this world, and that does predate the Saint of Steel series. And I do recommend reading that if you haven't picked up the other ones, but it's not necessary. There's no announcement yet for whether there will be another book in the series next year, but it does say on T. Kingfisher's website that she has plans for 3 more books in the series that are already written. So I imagine we're going to at least get an announcement next year of another book. The next one is one I'm not sure if I'm going to be continuing, but I have been strongly debating whether or not I will make progress in it and finish it off. It's only a trilogy. I've read the first 2 books, and that is the Fallen Gods series by Hannah Kaner. The thing is I don't like these books. I don't like them. But now I'm invested, and there's only 1 book left, and my brain is like, you know what? We might as well just finish it. So maybe I'll just finish it. The next one is called Faith Breakers. So there's 2 books out so far. First one is God Killer, which I have read and done a full rant review. The next one is Sunbringer, which I have read and also done a full rant review. So like I said, there's only 1 more book. Even if I'm not really enjoying it, I do get a little bit of pleasure over like hate reading a book. I know it's a toxic behavior, but whatever. I enjoy it. So I may read that just to finish it off and see if the improvements that I think the author could make and should make will happen in this series. If not, that'll be the 3rd strike for this author, and I won't be reading any more of her stuff. The last one that I started in previous years was the Mercy Thompson series by Patricia Briggs. I started this in 2022 with Moon Called, and I continued it in 2023 with reading Iron Kissed and Bloodbound in the other order. And this year I read Silverborn, Rivermarked, and what was the other one? Bone Crossed. Not in that order. I'll put the order up here because I just told you them in a very different order than I read them in. This is a werewolf paranormal romance series that is kind of silly and I kind of enjoy. I may just spend a month knocking them out and getting caught up. There's like 12 books in this series or more, I think, and I'm only partway through it. But I do like keeping them for a rainy day book when I know I need something that I can easily get through, and it's going to be at least a 3-star. So we'll see what I do with that series next year, but I do plan on making progress in it, if not finishing it or catching up, because I believe more books are still coming out in this series, and there is an adjacent series. That brings us to series that I have started this year and plan on finishing next year, and let me take a peek real quick and see how many I have. 18 unfinished series rolling over that I started this year. So even though if you've watched my series ranked, where I believe I went through, I don't remember how many, but quite a few, 12 finished series, I still have 18 more that I have not finished. Some of that is because they're not completely published yet, but we'll get to it. Okay, so the first one actually is one of the first ones I started in the beginning of the year, and that's the Fractured Fables duology by Alex E. Harrow. I think this is going to stay just a duology, but I'm unsure. This is reimagined fairy tales, and I really enjoyed the first one, which is A Spindle Splintered, and that reimagines Sleeping Beauty, and it's a Spider-Verse, basically, inspiration. Alex E. Harrow says in her author's notes that she wondered what would happen if she Spider-Versed a fairy tale. So we get multiple iterations of Sleeping Beauty within the same story, and I just thought it was really unique, and I like Alex E. Harrow's writing, and I'll be continuing this next year, hopefully. They're novellas, they're very short. Speaking of novellas, let's continue with that a little bit. The Murderbot Diaries is one that I started this year and fell in love with. I love Murderbot so much. I did only read 4 novellas in this series, but I plan on reading more next year. There are 7 main series stories and 2 parts that go in between things. So there's a lot in this series to continue. I've only read 4 of them. This follows a security unit who has named itself Murderbot, and it has hacked its government chip, and it has just kind of gone rogue and is doing its own thing, and it really would just rather not interact with anyone and just watch its trashy daytime TV, and I am kind of here for that. Continuing in novellas, the Wayward Children's series by Seanan McGuire is one I started just recently with Every Heart a Doorway. This has 9 books out so far, and I believe the 10th one is coming out in January, if I have my numbers correct. I know it's coming out January, but I think it's the 10th one. And this follows children who can go through portals to other worlds and what happens to them when they come back in this world. I found it really heartwarming and also darker than I expected. It gets constantly listed as a cozy, and I can see that kind of feeling cozy, but it's so much darker than I expected, and I really enjoy them, and I can't wait to continue. If I wasn't trying to stick to a plan this month, I probably would have just dropped everything and continued it. Moving on to something a little bit different is the Chorus of Dragons series by Jen Lyons. Dog scratching. The first one of this is called A Ruin of Kings, and this was just a really unique story set in a different world with a slightly different twist on the hero's journey arc. It's confusing and complicated, and I listened to it on audio, and I think next year I'll probably pick these up physically, which means a reread, because once I start a series one way, I like to finish it that way. So I'll probably end up picking up a physical copy of The Ruin of Kings and rereading it. I really think this is one that the audio did kind of help, because we had different narrators, but we jump a lot to different POVs with footnotes and everything in it. And I think having the audio narrators with different voices actually helped quite a bit in understanding it, but there was still some complicated stuff where I wanted to flip back and be like, wait, what was that? And so I was constantly bookmarking in the audio file to go back and recheck things, and it's a little complicated, but I do think it's really good. The next is one that just started this year. That's the Lunar Gothic trilogy. These are a series of novellas that are a bit noir and gothic and sci-fi. Very interesting, very unique. I really recommend them. They're in the horror category, but they were a really good time. The first one is The Crypt of the Moon Spider, and the second one is due out next year. I did start the Inheritance cycle finally this year. That's the Aragon books. I had never read them as a teenager, even though I was like the prime age. I wasn't really into reading YA books and wasn't a big fantasy reader, so I started them this year. I can see their value in them. I think it was fine, but I would like to continue because I do know that one of the last books, which is the 5th book, came out this year, and I would like to see how Christopher Paolini advanced in his writing from writing Aragon when he was 15 to now when he's like my age-ish. Another one that I started near the end of the year is the Magic of the Lost series. This is C.L. Clarke. It starts with The Unbroken. There is one other book out. I can't remember the name of the second book. And then the 3rd book comes out this coming year. Hopefully. I think there's not a release date for it. Or there is one. I can't remember. But it comes out mid-year, I believe, is what it's supposed to be, if there is a date. So I'm interested in continuing the series. I really loved it. This will be in my top books of the year. I just absolutely fell in love with the world building, with the characters, and the way everything was written. The audio narration was peak for this. The next one is another novella that I actually started in the beginning of the year called The Lies of the Ajungo by Moses Osei Utomi. I really like this one. The second one is out. I just didn't get around to picking it up this year, but it's definitely on my radar to finish it next year, especially knowing that the series is concluding next year. These are novella series. They're a little bit YA. They're set in North Africa, and I really just found it absolutely fascinating. The world building and the metaphors that the author used to talk about current things in society. I just found it really, really good. The next one is again Christopher Paolini. I may be picking this up. This is unsure. This is the prequel of To Sleep in a Sea of Stars, or a sequel, or set in the same world. Can't remember what it's called, but it's part of the Fractal verse. I cannot remember what it's called, but there was some controversy originally over the cover being done with AI, and I believe that has been resolved at this point, but I'm not 100% sure. So given how much Christopher Paolini talks about in Sleep in a Sea of Stars working with artists for the sketches in his book, I'm really surprised that that came out with an AI cover. The Skyward series by Brandon Sanderson is the only Brandon Sanderson I've read, and I picked it up this year. It's a YA sci-fi story that I think was really well done and really fascinating, actually really funny in some places, but also kind of dark and sad. There are 4 books and 5 novellas in this series, and I've only read one of them, so I do plan on making some progress, if not completing it. It was a very quick read given the length of the audiobook, I was invested and I thought the audio acting was really good, and I'm happy to continue in that world. The Amina Al-Sarafi series is hopefully continuing this next year. Shannon Chakraborty has mentioned a couple of times the different reasons that the book has been delayed. One of them was to do with giving birth, and I believe I saw that in a Reddit AMA. But she does say that she's working on writing it, or was last year, and it is in progress. So hopefully we'll get a release date for that this year, because I am intrigued to finish it. The Singing Hills cycle. I really wish I could have caught up on this year, but their long hold for the 5th book was a challenge for me at the end of the month, so I have not yet read it. This is by Nevo, and it follows Cleric G, who is a traveling historian, essentially. And so they travel around with their little recorder bird, and they gather up all the stories of the region, and then we get to hear them. And I really enjoy the way that this novella series is going and the different things it's exploring, and just really good. So I will be continuing this one. There are 5 out currently, and I don't know if it's continuing next year. I honestly am unsure, but if it does, I will keep reading it. The next one is another novella. I was on a novella kick this year, and that is She Who Knows by Nnedi Okorafor. This is an interesting series because it is technically a prequel to Who Fears Death, but also takes place after the end of Who Fears Death, so spoils it, and then also has its own series starting. So we're going to get another novella this year called This. I can't remember what it is right now because my memory is just shot today. I am on the struggle bus right now. So I can't remember what it's called, but it is by Nnedi Okorafor. It's a novella. It has a release date. It will be out, and it will be continuing the story of the character whose name I also can't remember right now from She Who Knows, as she continues on her journey. So if you've read Who Fears Death, this is Anya Sanwu's mother, and she will be getting her own arc, and I think she deserves it. If you've read that book, you know what she went through, and now she's going to get something a little bit good, at least. It is Nnedi Okorafor, so everything's going to be a little bit dark, a little bit gritty, and really creative. Another one I recently started is the Tex Kalani series. This is by Arkady Martine. This is only a duology, and both books are out, and I really want to finish it. The first one is A Memory Called Empire. I really liked what it did. I thought it was really creative, and I'm curious to see what happens next in this world. And the next one is A Desolation Called Peace. The Monk and the Robot series, back to novellas. This series is complete. It's a duology. I read the first one, which is A Psalm for the Wild Built. I really enjoyed it. I thought that it was a great conversation about productivity and your place in society, and it really healed something in my post-academic soul. The second one is called A Prayer for the Crown Shy, and it continues in this world. Again, these are novellas, so I love sprinkling novellas in throughout the year just to break up things a little bit and give me a change of pace, and I'm looking forward to finishing this series. The Lord of the Rings. I know. Okay, so I finished the first book when I was in my early 20s, and I wasn't really a fan, and then but I loved the movies, so I was like, I know I like this at some point, but the pacing was difficult for me. So I reread the first book this year. I listened to it on audio, read by Andy Serkis, and that did something. So I bought the first book and the second book because I had originally given away my Bound trilogy, and I ordered the second book. I want to continue in it. I'm just debating whether I'm going to reread the first one physically and then continue physically, or get the second book on audio and continue through audio and then maybe do a physical reread. I'm on the fence, and again, it's because I like to stay consistent within series. My brain does not like to change how I'm consuming a series. It feels really difficult for me, and I end up not doing it if I try to switch. Another Nnedi Okorafor is the Desert Magicians duology. This is a YA sci-fi fantasy, and I read the first one. I liked it. It was pretty good. I had some issues with it, but I'm curious to see what happens in the second part of the story. Follows a young woman who is in a very misogynistic world, getting some magical powers. This is standard par for the course Nnedi Okorafor from what I have read from her, and gritty books. I would probably put them almost in a grimdark category, but I need to relook up what that definition is, but they're definitely grimdark adjacent. And the very last one is another duology. This is Night's Edge. I read the first one by Liz Karen? I think so. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really good. It was one of my top books of the month. I was enthralled with the world building and the pacing. It does a lot with abusive mother-daughter relationships, which I have said before, I have mommy issues. I like things with mommy issues in them, and I really want to continue with this series. I have the second book already. I just need to get a chance to sit down and read it. But being a mood reader is very hard for me to go, yes, I'm going to read that book this month. Given, I don't have them all out here, but this is what I'm currently reading, along with The Wild Robot. So, because I can't decide, plus an audiobook on random. So, other series that I want to get to next year that I don't have on this list. So this is the 18 that I have started and finished the first book of, The Poppy War. I can't remember what this trilogy is called, but I am partway through this book, hoping to finish it before the end of the month and continue with the series next year. Then let's go to Robin Hobb. I'm in the middle of the realm of the Elderlings, middle-ish, I think. I have finished the Farseer trilogy and the Live Ship Traders. I plan on starting the Tawny Man series, which starts with Fool's Errand, I believe. I plan on starting that in January with the Fits Along. I got a little bit ahead and decided to give myself a break and then start up with them again in January. If I get ahead, I get ahead. But this is, again, that weird thing for me where I started the first 2 trilogies in this world on audio, and the next one I will be picking up digitally or physically because my library doesn't have an audio copy of the Tawny Man trilogy. So I will be picking up the physical books, which I already have purchased. I found them used and I'm very excited to continue with the series. But again, it feels a little daunting. The other series that I want to read is The Priory of the Orange Tree. I can't remember what this trilogy is called. Ooh, I think Poppy Wars, The Burning Gods. Anyway, I've not read this yet, but my plan is my friend and I are going to buddy read in January, February, The Priory of the Orange Tree, because I'm going to read it physically. Then March, April, we're going to read the sequel, and then the third book is supposed to come out this summer. So then we'll be prepped and ready to pick up that third book when it comes out. What are the other ones? The First Law World by Joe Abercrombie. I finished the First Law series, and there are, I believe, three cheese trees. There are 3 standalones and then another trilogy in this world, maybe 4 standalones and then another trilogy. So my friend is actually going to be starting The Blade itself as soon as her audio hold or her Libby hold comes through. She's reading it physically. I've been reading them on audio. And as soon as she catches up, I may join her if assuming that she likes it. I will be picking up the standalone with her hopefully next year. I started a reread, lastly, because I know there are others, but we're not going to talk about them. Lastly, I started a reread of the Locked Tomb series. This year, I read Gideon twice again. So I read Gideon the Ninth 3 times now. I read Harrow once this year, so I have now read Harrow twice. And I'm going to pick up Nona next year, but I think I'm going to start over again and reread Gideon for a 4th time, and then Harrow for a 3rd time, and then we'll reread Nona for a 2nd time. So I do plan on doing another reread of those. I was doing breakdowns of these books, and it's just been a while since I've refinished Gideon, that I do plan on going back, rereading it, and giving you some more breakdowns of Gideon and Harrow next year. Some more in-depth stuff that I really enjoy doing. So that's my series plan for next year. Let me know if any of these are ones that you love or you have finished or you plan on reading next year. If you want to do a buddy read with me, let me know on any of these and I'd be happy to do them with you. So these are just series that I plan on continuing in, not ones I plan on starting. I'll see you soon.